1. This was a time when I was working as a barman in a student's bar. A very friendly and nice place where everybody loved to hang out, mostly on Wednesdays and Fridays, and have time to make group homework together and chill on other calm days. One of those calm days was when there was not much work, but more of storytelling with the barman. I was joined with 3 cute girls that came in that day, and they were telling me that they decided to drink today and hang out because one of those girls had caught their boyfriend cheating and had a stormy breakup. And 2 of those girls were telling stories of their breakups because of the same situation. Now, breakup revenges begin. One of the girls, Birdie, started to tell us about her revenge. Birdie realized that her boyfriend was cheating and hatched a plan for revenge while acting like she knew nothing about the whole cheating situation, even though there was a lot of evidence. Her plan was to ruin her boyfriend's car that he loved and cared for, by her own words, even more than he cared for and loved Birdie. So one day she filled a syringe with an egg and injected it into her boyfriend's car seats. Then she broke up with him and has never seen him after. She told us that the time after the breakup was winter, and you can imagine how it was smelling inside of the car when summer came, with scorching heat and 6 months of rotting egg, with no clue where it came from. That's how Birdie lays eggs to cheating boyfriends. Then we all calmed down after having a yuck moment, and laughed as another girl, Spiky, geared up her memory, due to the keyword car, and started another revenge story about her own cheating boyfriend. She was a student and had a part-time job as an assistant insurance agent. She was living in an apartment that was inherited from her granny with her boyfriend, and Spiky's boyfriend was from another town, so they decided to live together in order to avoid him renting and using rent money from his parents for a better student life, such as drinks and parties. On one of those parties, she caught him cheating with some other girl and ran home after a cruel argument. From her words, she didn't know, but on the way home, filled with tears and anger, Spike had remembered that she was the one who insured her boyfriend's car on her job, and remembered all conditions of the contract with the insurance company. There was a tricky part, I don't know why, but in case there was damage to the tires, there were only 3 conditions where insurance would pay for the damage. Conditions were when 1, 2, or all 4 of the tires are damaged, but not 3. So a plan was imminent. She also said her boyfriend knew because they were making fun of this stupid condition. So she took a screwdriver and punctured 3 of his car tires and put a camera on a window, the 3rd floor, to look on the exact space where the car was being parked. Packed all his stuff and put it in front of the door and locked the door with all locks. They were only using 1 lock, so he only had 1 key. That day the boyfriend came back and took his belongings and went to sleep in his car, and the next day saw that all 3 tires were flat. He instantly knew what had happened and who did it. But because of a lack of evidence, or some hangover thoughts, he decided to puncture his last tire and file a report to the insurance company. That's the part where the camera on the window played its role, because she showed everything to the insurance company. Spiky was proud of this, and she said that crap happens, and now it's the turn of the 3rd girl to share some act of pettiness. Never cheat, spare your car's tires, etc. 2. Backstory. This happened about 30-odd years ago. Was working as a storeman with 4 other employees and a supervisor. The supervisor and I got on okay, the first 4 years or so, but things deteriorated in the last year I was there. Supervisor 1 ended up getting promoted in the company, and although he managed our department, he was now completely hands-off, and another guy was brought in as supervisor, even though I knew more about running the warehouse than anyone else. No big deal. But clearly I had been sidelined by Supervisor 1. Also worth noting, Supervisor 1 had a close mate who was one of the other workers. One of those guys who was better socially than ability, if you know what I mean. The story. The new supervisor was a guy who had been with the company for 15 years. Not a popular guy, but he was known for not caring what anyone else thought. I didn't particularly like him, and generally avoided anything to do with him in terms of conversation, because we had little in common and less we agreed on. I just kept my head down and did the work in front of me. One of his stated objectives was to come in and observe how the department ran, and what could be done to improve it, After a few weeks, Supervisor 2 was called to a big meeting upstairs with Supervisor 1 and the other managers. He comes back an hour or so later and tells me what happened. When he went in, they were all smiles. They asked him if they had to get rid of any workers, who would he choose? He said Supervisor 1's mate was the most useless person there. He made the most mistakes, did the least work, wasted the most time, basically a lazy waste of space. They asked him about me. Am I not the main problem? Supervisor 2 says nope, he's the only one I trust to know how to do things properly. Pretty much every idea I've presented on how to improve operations down there is either directly from him, or if I thought of something, I'll run it past him to see if it's worthwhile. Turned out they thought as I didn't seem to get on with Supervisor 2, he would be keen to get rid of me. Even though we weren't mates, he understood getting rid of me would have been detrimental. It was clear the only person not going to stay was Supervisor 1's mate. From this meeting on, Supervisor 1's mate was a grade A prick. He took being lazy to a new level. He was trying to mess up my work, but he wasn't smart enough to do it without making it obvious. Things like taking products out of picked orders, leaving my work for others to check. All work was double-checked, generally trying to make me look bad. PettyRevenge target number 1. After about 3 months, Supervisor 2 tells me he told the bosses either Supervisor 1's mate goes or he does. It takes about a month or so, but Supervisor 2 is told they have asked Supervisor 1's mate to either quit or be fired. He tells everyone he's quitting to go on a trip around our country. His dream for a long time that nobody had ever heard about, and this guy talked about himself a lot. By this time, Supervisor 2 and I are jack of him, so come up with the perfect going-away present for a long driving trip. While the finishing up lunch is in process, we sneak out to his car and place 2 prawns and shrimp under the front seats. It was summer, it would take about 24 hours for the first hint of something not quite right to start whiffing up. And even if the prawns were found, the smell is a long-term problem. PettyRevenge target number 2, it was now obvious there would be an issue if I left. I was asked to take part in management training. I said yes, knowing I had bought a small business from a family friend who had agreed to hold off on the handover for a few months during holiday season, so I could get the paid public holidays. It was the responsibility of Supervisor 1 to coordinate the training, and he had to deal with me a lot about it. It was killing him to be nice to me. Just after the last of the public paid holidays, I booked my holidays to make sure I wouldn't miss out on those paid holidays as well. I quit the day I got back. During the exit interview, I was able to explain that I really saw my future with the company, but when Supervisor 1 was preferred to me, I thought it was obvious there wasn't a path to move forward in the company. This was made even clearer when I was told what happened in the meeting. That was the point I started looking for other opportunities, and found this one in my holiday. The best part was asking Supervisor 1 if he still wanted me to do the management training that had been scheduled on my return from holidays. 3. Same story I've seen posted a few times. Loud-ass, inconsiderate roommates being loud and inconsiderate. I've known them for years, as they are 2 of my best friend's younger brothers. They were raised in a chaotic, just turn it up louder to drown out everything else kind of home. I was raised in no one else wants to hear your music, keep it to yourself home. In addition to getting up at 5:30 a.m. to start playing music at full volume from their phones and smart speakers, while singing out of key and just repeating the same note, they also had to have the television at theater volume at all times. They had this attitude that since they were awake, everyone else must also be awake too, so they can be as loud as they want. I started out being rational. I politely asked them to not turn it up so loud. I pointed out that they were approximately 4 feet from the television, and that if I could hear syllables in the dialogue from the other side of the house, it was too loud. They'd always turn it down for about 20 minutes and right back up at full volume. They forced my hand. I don't feel bad about what happened next. Since the internet service was in my name and I'm the only one who understood how to log into the router, I went in to make a few changes. Of course, I changed the admin login info so they couldn't log into the router themselves. I banned their smart speakers from the Wi-Fi totally. You know how cheaply made those speakers are, right? Just stopped working all of a sudden. And then I did the same thing with the television. I knew their lunch schedules since we were all working from home, so before their lunch break I would go ban the TV first, so it always showed a network connection error. They'd spend their whole lunch break screaming and cussing at the TV before slamming the door, headed back to their rooms. There were some questions about whether or not I was the culprit, so I scheduled the TV to ban to happen at certain times when I wasn't home. I even scheduled the ban to happen while I was watching something and got pissed about the shitty internet. Ooh. Just so they'd see it was happening to me too. They decided to get 2 massive Bluetooth PA speakers that didn't connect to the internet. Shit. Well, until I realized I could connect to them easily. Maybe it was the music they were playing that had me cross a bunch of contemporary Christian crap. So I connect and play the most satanic and evil music I could find. The remaining year living with them was quiet-er, because they believed that our internet was trash, and also that the internet was trash because of a technology demon. It was me. I was the technology demon. 4. This isn't really my malicious compliance, as I was just a slightly hot and grumpy witness, but it just popped into my mind on my way home from my shift, and I figured I'd share it. About a decade ago, while I was waiting for my current department to hire, I took a job with a private EMS company as an EMT-1 on a fast response motorcycle unit, contracted out to our local freeway agency for accident response. It was an okay gig. Long hours and riding 300+ kilometers every day killed my love of biking, but it beat the hell out of working on an ambulance. The same agency also staffed pickups with safety crews for the purpose of lane closures and scene safety. While we were a quasi-governmental unit, we had no real authority outside of that allowed to us by the Fire Brigade Services Act, and often had motorists ignore our suggestions when it came to not driving through accident scenes. This meant that police units still had to smack peepees occasionally, and it was usually quite fun to watch. I had the pleasure of working the same stretch of highway as a certain Metro Police motor unit, and I watched him screw with people a few times. 2 specific times come to mind. The first time I saw this salty old bugger use his powers of shithousery was after a multi-vehicle pileup just after an aggressive bend in the freeway that closed down 3 of the 4 lanes of traffic, causing a line of cars that stretched for a few kilometers back around the bend, meaning that cars at the rear couldn't see what was causing the delay up front. A number of drivers decided that they were too important to wait and drove up the hard shoulder, half on the road and half on the grass, to mosey on by the accident scene, leaving the rule-abiding drivers to sit in the hot sun looking at us with dismay. After a few of them snuck by, nearly hitting crews who were busy treating patients and almost taking out a recovery vehicle, this absolute stud of a man got fed up and moved his bike into the shoulder, but in such a way that they weren't able to see him. Every car he stopped got told to park and wait while he waited for his next victim. After he'd collected a gaggle of about 20 of them, he slowly made his way up the line, ticket book in hand, to have an unhurried chat with each driver individually. Not only did I get to watch each idiot eat an almighty fine for leaving the roadway and ignoring emergency vehicles, they also had the pleasure of sitting there as the scene was cleared before being allowed back into traffic, turning a 20-minute delay into nearly an hour of baking in the noonday sun. There was much gnashing of teeth and mutterings of, "Don't you have anything better to do, officer?" While that was pretty funny to me, the best I saw of him was a few months later when we got a call for a scrap metal hauler that was quite impressively overloaded that had managed to roll over while on the 2-lane overpass connecting the same national freeway to the city freeway that led into the industrial area south of the city's center. This thing must have been pushing 40,000 kilograms when it wedged itself nose against the right-hand concrete barrier and tail digging a deep gouge into the counterpart barrier on the left. This meant that there wasn't a ball hair on either side of the truck and traffic was diverted at the entrance to the overpass, around 500 meters up from the scene. I didn't technically need to be there at this point, as the driver had been taken to hospital, and the road was closed awaiting the arrival of 2 heavy rigs to lift and recover the truck and contents. I was leaning on my Suzuki, purving over this officer's BMW R1200 RT, when we noticed that the crew of the safety unit at the closure was having difficulty with a vehicle that seemed to think they were above the law, and were aggressively trying to get by the pickup, cones, and angry men in reflective gear. Seeing this and the potential for injury, he told them to wave the car through. As it zoomed down, then up to us, on the top of the overpass, he winked at me, and when they stopped behind the very heavy and very wedged truck, he wandered over to have a chat with the driver, who was apparently the spokeswoman for the force-strong irritation of Karens within. The crux of this chat with her was that he certainly understood their point about needing to get to their highly important destination, but that the road they had elected to use was currently blocked by 40 tons of mangled steel. And he was sure they would agree. It would be dangerous for her to drive back against the traffic, considering that we had heavy rigs and support vehicles arriving and setting up. He apologized for the inconvenience, but directed them to park up by our bikes and wait for the rigs to do their thing, after which we could all be on our merry way. It took about an hour to get the road clear, after which they most definitely weren't making eye contact, and appeared like beaten dogs as he finally wished them safe travels on their way. 5. I used to rideshare quite often, and never had issues until people started doing it as a hustle. One of the last rideshares I ever took was beyond frustrating. I book a rideshare that is typically $30, but they wanted $35. I figure it's just $5 and book it anyway. On the day of, me and 3 others are waiting to be picked up, and the guy doesn't show up and stops responding. Right around this time, another guy, not matching the description, and a different vehicle, pulls up and asks if we're waiting for a rideshare. He said his didn't get booked up and was going to the same place. We all figured, screw it, we gotta get to where we're going, and all get in. This vehicle was not nearly as nice as what we were expecting. In fact, I'd say it was hardly safe enough to be on the road. We proceed on to our destination, about 5 hours away, and the guy is driving like a madman, going way over the limit, hardly paying attention to the road, and yelling on the phone while chewing food with his mouth open. We stop for gas halfway, and is typically where payment is collected. I go to hand him the $35 I agreed on, even though I forgot we went with someone else, and he says to me it's $70 per person. I say absolutely not and called him out on the bait and switch, and he threatened to leave me at some random gas station in the middle of nowhere. The other passengers were upset, and we all settled on $50 per person to meet part way. He accepts the cash, and we all get back in. Again, no music, just him yelling on the phone while eating and speeding. A few minutes in, I tell the guy to pull over, and we all start raising our concerns with his driving. One of the ladies in the back had a toddler with her and was very upset. He yelled at all of us, saying he knows how to drive, and if we don't like it, we can get out just off the side of the highway, where we got him to stop. We then civilly and politely asked him to just even slow down a little, and he made a big fuss, then agreed. Surprisingly, he did slow down, but now instead of being in a call, he was texting the whole time, and we almost got into an accident when he barely stopped in time, since he was hardly paying attention and the brakes hardly worked. We finally got to the destination, and we were all relieved to be done with it. I was determined to report this guy, so I took a quick photo of his license plate. He saw me do this and immediately attacked me and grabbed both my arms and tried to wrestle my phone out of my hands, and tried knocking it out and pushed me a few times. I walked into a store and called the police and asked witnesses while waiting if they'd share what they saw. They were all too scared to get involved. The police actually show up before the guy left, but as soon as the cops approached him, he had 2 other vehicles pull up and back him up. This is when I realized these scammers have a whole network going. They claimed that I attacked the other guy, and his girlfriend claimed I hit her as well, The cop then tried to access security footage from nearby, and we were in a blind spot. The cop basically said, "You guys figure it out," and all the cops drove off. Didn't take a report or anything. So I sat on this for a couple of days and decided I had to get them back somehow. I set up about 7 or 8 fake numbers and texted both numbers that I had for these guys, picking up every car they had. I even took it a step further and offered extra to be picked up at various locations far apart from each other. Took some convincing, but they agreed for the right price. I booked up 2 cars with fake details, and every time they text that they arrived, I would say, "Taking a shit, I'll be right out." Until enough time had passed, they would just call instead, and I would just answer with the wettest fart sounds the internet had to offer. You could hear the frustration building with each time this happened. Best part is, they kept falling for it because they had no way of knowing if the next pickup was legit. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 281. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Please do poke that like button before you go. If you'd like to get the videos a little bit early, you can support me through Patreon for as little or as much as you like a month. You can also buy yourself some Hellfreezer merchandise, which is linked in the description. And you can make donations during streams and videos like this one on a one-off basis if that's more to your liking. Of course, you don't have to do any of that, and I intend to keep the videos coming as long as I can, but the money does help. Alright, let's see. No other business today, I don't think. No, I cleared out my birthday shoutouts folder, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, with the rise of services like Uber and Lyft and probably some others I can't remember, what other service that you rely on can you see being outsourced to cheap contractors who can just sign up for an app? I mean, I certainly hope they'll never do that with mail delivery. It's bad enough right now as it is. Let's hope that the surgeons are required to be qualified and aren't just required to take a 5-minute course on the internet. But I could definitely see service like chefs, waiters, waitresses, kitchen staff. I can see an app being created where people can sign up for that, and restaurants are short on staff. They can just go on the app and they can book people through that. In fact, that might already be a thing, or maybe I just invented it, in which case, Bagsies, it's mine. It's kind of a horrifying idea, though. Anybody walking in, don't know what they're doing, throwing fish at you and calling it service. Anyway, let me know what you think in a comment below. I look forward to seeing your ideas. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.